It's now my pleasure to introduce Mary Mallett and Melanie Muir, who I suspect need no introduction, to be perfectly frank, in this room. Mary is the CEO of Disability Advocacy Network Australia, or DANA, as many of you will know, the Canberra-based national peak body for independent disability advocacy in Australia. DANA supports organisations in every state and territory that work to promote and advocate for the rights of people with disability. It's fantastic to see DANA partnering with Daru to deliver this national conference for the first time. And can I just really emphasise that, because we were thrilled in terms of having Daru and DANA partnering to have a national conference. It is a brilliant opportunity and really pointed at this moment in time. So a very big thank you, Mary, much appreciated. Melanie is the President of Disability Advocacy Victoria, and together Disability Advocacy Victoria, or DAV, and VCOSS deliver Daru, the Disability Advocacy Resource Unit. And in noting that as well, can I do a bit of a shout out to Melissa and Natasha from Daru as well? We'll have more of that later. Melanie has been working in community services for the past 30 years. She leads the advocacy team at Leadership Plus, which is funded through the National Disability Advocacy Program and delivers disability advocacy. NDIS appeals work, and also runs the Decision Support Project. Leadership Plus provides advocacy to literally hundreds of people every single year and is committed to working with the disability advocacy sector to strengthen the rights of people who are living with disability. So please join with me in welcoming Mary and Melanie to the stage, and we very much look forward to hearing from both of you. Thank you.
I'm really pleased to be here today, and it's great to see so many people join us. I also, it's music to our ears to hear that the importance of a strong advocacy sector is seen as crucial to the success of the Royal Commission, as well as the day-to-day life that we all see in the work that we do. I've got a whole kind of thing of notes here that I've been jotting down over the last week or so to talk about. And kind of any little tangent could go on for some time. Disability advocacy work is diverse, it's challenging, and it can't be underestimated, how much needs to be done and how important it is that we work together collaboratively as a sector, and to get the ear of decision makers that have a huge impact on the people that we meet every day. So the byline, I think, to this section is delivering equal rights for people with disability. And our agency has just shut its books again, and that's the third time, I think, over the last year. So when I say shut our books, it means that we're saying no to people who are asking for assistance. So we're in a position where we're not even sort of finding out necessarily what's going on for people. We may refer people on, but we are essentially closing our books, trying to address the wait list that we have, trying to get through the work that we've already got. Across the state, I understand that this is happening in all of the agencies. It's 33 agencies across the state, and a lot of those people are closing their books. We try and communicate with each other so that we all know what's going on. So let's just unpack that, closing the books, saying no to people. So we're saying no to advocacy assistance, and that's the people that are coming to us. So I think what's really important to think about, and the challenge for us and the need for advocacy, is really to think about those people that haven't got to us, those people who don't know what advocacy is, those people that don't have a voice, those people that don't have a phone, those people that aren't online, those people that can't speak. So at present, when we think about people living with disability, if they're not complaining, it's assumed that they're okay. So I think that's a really important concept for us to think about when we think about advocacy, because the people who are coming to us are, I assume, people that are actually, more empowered than others that haven't heard about advocacy, don't know how to get to advocacy. I'll just take a little tangent. Daru is working, I sit on the governance board of Daru. The state government is looking at a feasibility study around intake for advocacy. And one of the things that I think's worth thinking about, it's very challenging, but one of the things that I think is worth thinking about for the advocacy sector is to have a single contact number for people to call should they need advocacy. I think that's something worthwhile exploring. The process of advocacy can be a delicate one. There's not enough resources within advocacy to link people who are most disempowered into advocacy. So doing that outreach work that really needs to be done isn't being done. We don't have the capacity to do that. So we're really just responding to people that get to us. So there's a whole community of people that haven't got to us and don't know about advocacy. So that delicate relationship about advocacy and how it works isn't well understood. It's not well understood about the resources that needs to go into that relationship. There's a lot of resources that need to go in and strengthen those relationships. It can take time. If you're working with a person that hasn't got a lot of trust, you need to build the trust. We saw the play just before with someone running around and others chasing them. We've all worked with people who have challenges and have difficulty, with engagement. So that relationship with advocacy, takes time to build, and it takes time to build trust. Takes time to understand about a person's life. It takes time to understand about the person's communication style. So that whole process of what happens in individual advocacy, where one person meets with another person and magic happens, is a very complex process. We've been working on decision support, and an element of advocacy. I do notice that the clock isn't counting down either. Is around decision support, and with the changes to the law coming in, significant changes and understanding around this assumption of agency and decision making that we're all going to be faced with, and looking at how important it is that where possible we're really focusing on how to support people in making decisions, and advocacy, I think, is crucial in a lot of those decisions. In terms of the agency work, I'll just say that DAV, Disability Advocacy Victoria, we call it DAV, has did a survey earlier this year. You may have seen it on the website, but it was really to find out whether what we thought was happening, and it is happening. The agencies are being overrun with work in relation to the NDIS and the transformation that's happening in the disability service sector, the loss of significant support roles in the service sector, so the impact of not having case management for a number of people is significant, and that's a big issue for advocacy. So we're working on a submission to the joint committee that's calling for submissions on planning. So Disability Advocacy Victoria is interested in any agency that's working on that, and if you have recommendations, we're happy to put that together with our submission. So I urge you to think about collaboration, to think about how we can work together, to think about rejoining DAV if your memberships run out, to think about how we can share the resources that we have and how we can best use the knowledge that we have, because while we might be poor with money, I think the investment that we have is the people sitting in the room and the skills that sit around each and every table out there, and the knowledge. And it's important to share that and to use it as best we can. I'll pass it over to Mary.
Thanks, Melanie. First thing I want to say is to the Minister, you can't believe what a pleasure it is to be sharing the space with a Minister from a government that gets advocacy, that understands what it does and how important it is. And the contrast between every other state and territory is astonishing. Victoria, please give him a clap. So the Victorian government have increased the funding for disability advocacy now over the past several years. They've had 3 different programs. They're all the words that we don't hear anywhere else. They're innovations and futures and capacity building. No other state government is doing that. The others are all trying really hard to get rid of the funding. And there are people in the room who have been fighting now against the New South Wales government in particular, but in other states and territories as well, really, really having to spend huge amounts of time, energy and effort to argue back to their state government that this work is important. So thank you, Minister. I've got a few slides about data, but I know they're not the most inspiring thing, and so there's a couple of other points I'll make before I show you a slide. Following on about the Victorian funding, the thing I think that we want to see and learn from those projects, those additional projects that some of you are doing, and that you have the opportunity to do because you're getting some funding to do advocacy in additional ways. And around the rest of the country, we want to understand the lessons that are learned from that so that we can try and take some of those same ideas and argue for them to happen in other states and territories. So we are really interested, and we'll be asking and talking to you about how those projects are working. The other thing is from the theatre group earlier. The first word in my mind was frustration, actually, and I was going to put my hand up, but I didn't bother to see how they would play out frustration. But actually, by the time they finished, the only word in my mind was pain, because what all of you in this room do is you hold people's pain. You hold it, you carry it, you share it, you absorb it. Because that's the only way that those people that you're helping they need to get clear of their problem, and they need, the way they do that is they dump that pain of the problem that they're dealing with onto you, and all of you just soak it up, and you do that every day in a way that's astonishing, really. It's almost not able to be understood, that you're able to get up, go to work every day, do that over and over and over again with such a range of people, and you're still able to get up in the morning and then come out here and look relatively cheerful. So it's a particular type of work that is, all of you in the room understand it because you do it, but it isn't widely understood, and you don't run around the country saying, oh, look, aren't we great? That's not what advocates do. But I want to acknowledge directly to you that it is understood, at least within the group, within the room. We understand that's what you're doing, is you're somehow absorbing pain and still are able to rise above it and keep working. Thank you. And the other thing that I wanted to say about that is the people, because I'm based in Canberra, and so I'm dealing with the Australian government departments, with DSS mostly, and they don't understand that pain. They don't see it. They don't, at least not in their formal bureaucratic way they deal with it. Neither the politicians nor the bureaucrats understand it, and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to be told it. They don't want theatre groups, dancing around Parliament House and showing them these things. What they want is data, and data doesn't show the pain. So somehow we have to find a way to connect the two. Because what I had a senior bureaucrat say to me last week when they were consulting me about something, and when I tried to give them some examples, they just referred to them as war stories. So that's how they view them, that all these terrible things that happen to people, they just see them as a series of war stories that we can trot out on command. It's difficult to bridge that gap. I'll quickly show you the data slides. People who are interested, we can discuss them later. What it is, this is the data, the national data from the NDAP, the National Disability Advocacy Program. So they're the 60 advocacy organisations funded by DSS. This is just this isn't the data by clients, it's by number of sessions, which is the number of issues that people work on. I'll just show you this one. So I know it's impossible to read from anywhere further back, but the main highlight is that on the left-hand side as you're on the stage, right-hand side as you're looking at it, the biggest issue is NDIS access and planning. Next one is NDIS internal review. The third one is NDIS, and it's either support implementing people's plans or accessing services. Those three are about 35% of the amount of time that advocates are spending at the moment. That's across the country on average. It's not the same, actually. Some individual organisations are spending much more time than that on NDIS issues, but that's how it works out. The next, in actual fact, the housing and homelessness, the purple one, should be between two of the NDIS ones because it's bigger, but we've put the NDIS ones together. So the next biggest issues other than NDIS are housing/homelessness, then legal/access to justice. The next one is government payments, so that's predominantly DSP issues, other finance issues, other health, mental health, education. There's a whole range of others that discrimination, rights, abuse, they come down as very small pieces out of that pie, but of course every one of those issues is critically important to the person who's experiencing it. So this is, what a graph looks like, a chart of the work that you're doing, and we have to find a way to combine some of this information, get down into it. That access to justice one is an example. One thing that says that's the percentage of the sessions that advocates do gives us no understanding of what that means. What kind of justice issues? Now, of course, what organisations do is you do whatever governments ask you to do in terms of reporting. This happens to be the categories that DSS wants to be reported on. They don't ask further detail. You don't have time to do any more than that. So individually, you would know what your legal and justice issues are, but the data doesn't show it. So we would have to do extra work to ask all of you to break some, if we were to focus on housing issues or access to justice, or later on some of these things are on the agenda, you'd be talking about the DSP, which is covered in there under government payments. So there's further work to be done for this to actually make any sense. Just quickly, this is the Indigenous status is asked. So 72.5% of the people who receive advocacy by NDAP advocacy organisations are not Indigenous or Aboriginal. 7.2% are, but almost 20% it's not stated. So there's other things that need to be unpacked. And for called, again, 95.5% are not called, and there's whatever the rest 4.5% then are. However, there are organisations in the room here who are called advocacy organisations. Therefore, 100% of the people that they see, I'm looking at EMDA from New South Wales, who are down there, 100% of the people that they see will be from called communities. This is just to show you how, this is as the data comes from DSS. Okay, this is what it looks like. This is about systemic advocacy. So those three colours refer to the darkest pink, purple one is systemic local advocacy, the mid colour one is national, and the lighter one is state level. So this tallest category there is discrimination and rights. It's got some of each colour because advocates are working on discrimination and rights issues at local, state and national level. There are some that are obvious. That the next highest one actually over here is legal/access to justice. That has no local component in it. It's predominantly state and a little bit of national, I think. Anyway, what I'm showing you this really not because this explains anything really significant. It's because we have a lot of work to do, and I'm keen to get people who are interested in working on data to volunteer, basically, to come and talk to me or email me, ring me, whatever, send me a message sometime whenever you get a chance, because we need to pull some stuff together. We need to be able to get the data. The Victoria has its own set of data from the Victorian state funded organisations. We have this set of national data. There's other stuff in it as well. Most of the other states don't actually collect advocacy data, but each advocacy organisation has its own set of data that you collect. So we have to find a way to pull it together, use it to show a story, and the story we have to tell is the story that will manage somehow to get increased funding for advocacy. I just caught the eye of one of the Tasmanian advocates who I was speaking to yesterday, who's in the room, who does the intake once a week. Melanie talked about them having closed their books, and many of you in the room, your advocacy organisations are currently at capacity. So the Tasmanian advocate Dominique yesterday was saying that on a Wednesday, when he has to do the intake, to make those decisions about who gets advocacy and who doesn't, he can't sleep on Wednesday nights because he's having to make these awful decisions about people who are in serious need. People don't come to an advocacy organisation unless they really need help, and yet they're having to be turned away. So we have to find that narrative, the stories, the case studies, the information about who's being turned away and why, and pull that together. And then we have to take it to a government at federal level that doesn't care about these issues, isn't interested in the problems, and doesn't want to acknowledge the work that this sector does. So the task is phenomenal. We need people with marketing skills who can sell the message. We need people who can turn this stuff into flashy graphics. We need all of that skill set. Some of it's in the room and some of it isn't, but some of you know people. And so I'm keen for anybody who wants to take part in this and help us build the picture to get in touch, and let's do some work together. And the one last thing, just put it on here to remind me about needing case studies. I actually need some case studies today. There's a Senate inquiry, just very quick one that's happening. We all know about the review that's about to happen into the NDIS legislation, the Tune review, and we'll be hearing lots more about that in the next few months. But there's actually a bill in the Senate at the moment called the Streamlined Governance Bill about the NDIS Act. It's to do with how the rules that determine how the Commonwealth Government and the state and territory governments agree on appointments to the board and the Independent Advisory Council of the NDIS. And there's some other stuff about categories of rules. That got sent to a Senate committee just quickly. There was a hearing on Friday, and myself and a few other people spoke at it, and they've asked for some case studies to be sent back to them by the end of today that show people stuck in systems. So they're wanting to see the reality of the people who because the NDIS isn't functioning as it should, the people who are stuck in hospitals or prisons or aged care homes. But so I'm sure some of you have some. You can just send me an email to my email address. If you could do that today, just a pseudonym for the person's name, their age, and a few dot points about the situation that they're in. That would be really good. Thank you very much.
Delegates, I'd like to thank both Mary and Melanie, and also Emma and Minister Donnellan for your contributions to this morning's session. Minister Donnellan, if I can just reflect that I promise I'm not stalking you. It's just that Victoria seems to love me just a little bit more at the moment, and I'm very thankful for that. And I'm very thankful for that for a number of reasons. One, because indeed what I hear certainly reflected back from not only people that I have the privilege to meet and work with, but also from you and your government, is your deep and vested commitment to people with disability, and in particular advocacy organisations. And so I think I'm not alone, certainly, in saying that we thank you and your government for the ongoing commitment you make to people just like me and advocates just like all of us in the room. Certainly, we have much work to do, delegates. There is no secret to that. However, what I do hope is that this morning has started to, in the famous words of one John Farnham, take the pressure down just a little. Because today is about celebrating and acknowledging the fantastic work that you do and the fantastic difference that you make. And indeed, in the words of Mariah Carey, this morning has got me feeling many emotions. Musical references aside, what I certainly have taken from this morning is that the conversation must continue, and indeed it will continue, with fierce advocates like you in the room. And indeed, Mary, if you need somebody in gold glittery shoes to dance at Parliament House as a fellow Canberran, I'm happy to do that at any drop of the hat, let me tell you. But can I also acknowledge, just in closing before we move to morning tea, the fantastic work of Senator Jordan Steele-John in the Australian Senate. The first senator who uses a wheelchair to access our federal Senate, and indeed he has been a key voice in progressing many areas of advocacy for people with disability. So I'd just like to acknowledge the re-election of Senator Steele-John, and indeed how important that is to see people like us, people with disability, in our national parliament. Without further ado, we have now moved to morning tea, and I think as captain of this ship, I've kept us on time. You know, I like to be sometimes fashionably late, make an entrance. You know, the stereotype has to deliver sometimes. But now it's morning tea time, and during morning tea, I'm going to come out and chat and mingle, but we'll also be showing, Daru will also be showing their very own episode of Gogglebox. Now, clearly, I was unavailable to appear in Gogglebox, but I'll speak to my agents about that later. But this episode will be shown both through morning and afternoon teas, featuring some amazing advocates in the sector. So enjoy morning tea, enjoy Gogglebox, and I look forward to meeting with you all. Thank you very much.